Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Cranked and Ranked, and welcome to the second in a three-part ranking of Judas Priest. If you were with us last time, we covered the lower third of the discography, which was album 18 through album 13, and now we're going to be doing the middle. Which I guess would be considered the least interesting of the bunch because it's not bad, it's not great, it's just okay. And so, yeah, we're doing 12 through 7 today. And I'm Steven, as usual, and with me, as always, is my trusty confidant, Eddie Sparks. Hello, sir.
How's it going?
It's great. That was kind of sexy. You're just like, hey, how's it going? It was.
I got to inject a little sauce into the meh part of the discography. So.
That's true. We're gonna try to sauce this up as much as we can, folks. So this is one of those things where I do believe that because there's so many albums and they're from so many different areas of history and music that starting with this episode is a bad idea. So why don't you go back and start with episode 1 because we're not ranking them by period. We're all over the place here. And yeah, so not much else to say. You got anything to add before we jump into this one?
Just got to say, like you said, that this is probably one of the most choosing my words here already. I'm off to a great start.
I'll edit that out.
I used up all of my energy on that sexy "how's it going" at the start. I was just gonna say that I've completely lost my train of thought, and I'm going to hand it back over to you.
They had to beat them to death with their own shoes. You sounded like him for a second.
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Okay. So, all right. Well, yeah, let's just get started. We're starting with our number 12s. So yeah, there's no way to give any context of where we are. You'll have to listen to the first part. So if you were there last time, welcome back and let's jump into it. What is your number 12, sir?
Okay. So, this is a controversial kind of pick because this album tends to find itself at the bottom spot for a lot of people, including you, and I've gone for Demolition, the second Tim Ripper Owens album.
Yeah, that was my dead last album for those of you who weren't listening.
And like I do agree with you on like there are some moments like the fucking like what is it, Cyberface with the megabyte line.
Yeah, beware his megabyte.
I was at work thinking about it and envisioning myself in the room with you when you just turned around and went, "Oh, fuck off."
It just came out of me. Sometimes, I don't know if it's Tourette's, but sometimes things annoy me so much that I have to let off steam somehow.
Sometimes it just happens, but yeah, I found that, I tend to like this, not so much in the lyrics, but even though Judas Priest isn't renowned for lyrics sometimes, they've had some pretty cheeseball lines throughout their career, but I will say I do like the aggressiveness of the songwriting, even though it does feel a little bit toned back from Jugulator. It feels like they tried to do Jugulator again, but gear it slightly more in a radio direction. But I'm just going to go into my track by track. So
cool.
It starts off with Machine Man, kind of a badass, aggressive opening track. I quite like this one. One on One. It's this chugging mid-tempo metal track. Gotta say, I do like his voice, I feel like the Ripper era tends to get kind of shit on just because it's not Rob Halford. And, you even look at Spotify and things like that, barring the total deletion of the album, it's been pretty much erased from the timeline, apart from like album rankings and stuff.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, you have to give him some credit though, because I do think with a vocalist like Rob Halford, anyone who replaced him wasn't going to get the best reception. I don't care who it was. They could have put Dio in the band, and I think people still would have been like, he just doesn't have what we're looking for.
Yeah, you got to think as well, like when Sabbath replaced Ozzy with Dio, it had only been about 10 years. By the time, Ripper came on board, Halford had been in the band for what, like 30 something years?
Well,
Like,
their first album was in 74, and then Painkiller was 90. So I mean, I'm going to round it up. He'd been in there for 2 decades.
yeah.
So that's quite a while.
Yeah, so, obviously, yeah, and Rob Halford being such a unique voice in not only range but tone as well. When you hear Rob Halford, that's fucking Rob Halford. So filling those boots would be a tremendous task for anyone enlisted to replace him. But you get Hell is Home, this slow grooving song. I like it. It's probably, this could be a generational thing. I don't know whether it's not. I don't adore the production on here, but I think it fits the songwriting here. Jekyll and Hyde, it's just like produced to be a modern, aggressive metal album. Because really, if you look at their 70s stuff, it's not the aggressive stuff that they would go on to do later, especially Painkiller and onward. And
yeah. I mean, they definitely. I know it's not the nicest thing to say about Judas Priest, but they seem like a band that has easily been steered one direction or another by something, whether trends or expectations of them. I just feel like it's a thing where this makes sense for them because they seem like a band that the times change or there's different expectations and they just go, all right, well, we'll do this. And they do it just fine. It's like on its own, it's not a bad album. It's just a bad Judas Priest album, in my opinion.
They really are a band that went with the times. They weren't really swimming against the tide at any point in their career. But regardless of how popular the albums were. But yeah, you get. Did I say Jekyll and Hyde?
I think you just got there.
Yeah, this album does feel like a slightly more radio-friendly version of Jugulator to me. It's got that heaviness there, but it's easier, more accessible in structure. So, yeah, you get Close to You, a ballad, a powerful one to its credit, but obviously I'm giving this album the benefit of the doubt. I haven't given it many repeat listens, but it didn't offend me really as a Priest fan. I was just kind of there like, yeah, this is like, aggressive and heavy, and I suppose it could be that I was just in that mood when I listened to it, and I probably listened to it more from the idea of it being a aggressive metal album rather than a Judas Priest album, which, especially with a different vocalist, is easy to do because you kind of forget at points that it is Judas Priest, and that's probably what makes a lot of people put it lower. But Devil Digger, I did like Devil Digger. It's this grooving, mean metal song. Bloodsuckers, up-tempo, mean metal song again. I was impressed with the aggressiveness that they managed to maintain, even though they toned back the, really out there stuff of Jugulator. But you can tell that they are competing with their contemporaries at this point. In between, you get a groove metal song, Feed on Me. keeps the aggressive metal vibe going. You know, I do like it. Subterfuge, really heavy, but you can definitely hear some new metal influence on this one. You know, some moments on it even reminded me of Korn.
Yeah.
You know, I was just waiting for Ripper to start, you know, scatting over the top.
I mean, this is 2001, so it's like that wave of the new metal was it hadn't died out yet. It was still going pretty strong.
Oh yeah,
For some bands anyway.
yeah. It was definitely that slightly more polished part of the new metal era, but it was still very much alive at that time. You get Lost and Found, ballad track. You know, Ripper is actually channeling some Lane Staley on that song. I could hear. And then you get your favorite, Cyberface. Which, yeah, I'll agree. The lyrics, bad. But it was this like psychedelic plodder. It sounded pretty evil and epic sounding, and I kind of liked it for that. And then finally you get Metal Messiah, which is, you know, another clearly new metal influenced track, but with this slightly psychedelic edge at points and a anthemic chorus. But yeah, it's definitely not their best, but I liked it a little bit more than you did.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, several albums more than I did, apparently.
A whole episode.
It's important to also note that so before I get into my number 12, for those of you who've decided to jump in midway, I am not a very big Judas Priest fan, and I wasn't really familiar with most of their albums as a whole. And so what I did was went through and listened to all of them in order, and kind of just took myself on the Judas Priest journey. And I keep saying Judas Priest. But I keep putting a T after Judas. I don't know what my problem is. Shit, edit that out. But so when I got to Demolition, that was my. And I think that's probably part of my mindset was I had already heard Jugulator, and this is not as good. And I was kind of over this period. I was already like, all right, I get this. Let's move on to when Rob comes back into the band. Do you have anything else to say about Demolition?
Nah, it's just like, you know, they were dipping their toes into that slightly, you know, much more modernized evolution of the sound they played with on Painkiller and Jugulator, and really it's just kind of setting up what they would sound like when Rob comes back, but it's not quite there yet.
And that's a great segue because my number 12 is the 2005 album. Nope, it's called Angel of Retribution. I don't know what my mouth was about to say, but my number 12 is Angel of Retribution, which is the album right after Demolition where Rob Halford returned to the band. And really, I think it's safe to say at this point in my ranking, there's a little bit of shit talking that's going to happen, but for the most part, I see a lot of qualities in all the rest of the albums we're going to be talking about. And this one was just a fun one to listen to because I guess having Rob Halford back in the band after, was it 10 years or more than 10 years, I think?
I think he left in 92 because that's when Fight was starting.
So yeah, it's been over 10 years, and it just sounds. I mean, Rob Halford sounds great. The band sound great. They just sound like a great band kind of returning home. Like they're coming back to their sweet spot, and I guess they're vibing off of playing with each other again, and it's just it's a great return in my opinion because it's got like a classic sounding production style, and it went back to what I like about earlier Priest albums where there's a variety of songs. It's not all metal. There's different levels of everything, and I think they did it pretty well here. The songwriting feels inspired. It doesn't feel like a band retreating, you know, like, oh shit, people didn't really like Demolition, we better get back and do the shit people like. This doesn't really feel like that to me. It feels like they missed it. Like they were like, oh man, we used to love playing this music, and now they're back doing it. So it's a very strong album. I really do think that there are a few moments here and there that are not amazing, but overall, it's all mostly in the second half where I think the album starts to fall off a little bit, and that leads me to the gripe that I have that kept this album from being higher is the song Loch Ness, which finishes up the album, because it is 13 minutes long and about 3 minutes worth of music happens in the fucking song. And so it's good because it's just repetitive. The riff sounds like a leftover Black Sabbath riff, and it's just plotting, and even the chorus does not deliver. It's if somebody said, oh, there's a metal song about Loch Ness, my brain would immediately go, what does it sound like? Loch Ness, Loch Ness. And that's what the fucking song is. It's just, it's real bad. And I didn't realize how bad it was until I realized that they would take that idea and then make an entire fucking album of Loch Ness called Nostradamus. And so I really think that it kills the end of this album, because other than that, my gripes are really small. It's a very strong return to form, and I guess that's why it's here. It's at the lower half of the middle is where Angel of Retribution lies. And so that's basically all I got about this one.
Fair enough. I will say I like parts of Loch Ness, and I feel like it could have been an epic closing track if they chopped off about 7 minutes of its runtime. Yeah,
Yeah.
It could have been this huge, just Sabbath style epic, chorus kind of thing with doom riffs all over it, but it just kind of ended up being this very good thing that was drawn out way too long, and the length of it, I agree, does hinder it, because it makes it a commitment to listen to rather than a choice.
Yeah, and it's that I hate to bring up the comparison again, but you can't escape it. I feel like they were going for something that Maiden would have done, and they just don't know how to do that.
Yeah,
they're a great band on their own, but Maiden is the band that can do a 13-minute song at the end of an album, and you feel like it fits right in.
Yeah,
and you don't feel like it's wasting your time. But in this case, I just don't think that they're that band, and so that's why I guess I don't know. It seems like it drags the album down.
Cool. So that's Angel of Retribution for you.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So coming in at number 11 for me, I went for Sin After Sin.
Oh, okay.
So this one for me stands apart in between the two more talked about albums that it sits between, because generally speaking, as with regards to their 70s stuff, people tend to talk about Sad Wings of Destiny and Stained Class a lot,
Yeah.
Sad Wings generally being for metal as a whole, and Stained Class having more of an influence on speed metal. But this album for me somehow sounds beefier than the album that came before it and the album that came after it.
Yeah.
There's more low end in the production. It's got way more just guts to it. And I feel like Stained Class could have been much higher if it just wasn't so trebly and lacking in, some low end. Because, when it comes to that album, I love the songs, but the production makes it a bit of a chore. Mm-hmm. So that's why those two albums were back in the previous episode. Put your pitchforks down. I don't hate them. But the production of the 70s, I feel like the kind of dry sound they went for. It didn't really do their kind of massive sound when they would play it live any justice. So that's why, if you're a fan of their 70s songs but don't like the 70s production, check out Unleashed in the East. That's a great live album, but I'm not talking about Unleashed in the East. I'm talking about Sin After Sin. So
yeah, we didn't add any live albums or anything else because we're already dealing with 18 fucking albums here.
this is going to be like a 4-parter if we add in the fucking live records. But yeah, Sin After Sin.
Just wait until we do the Rolling Stones.
Jesus Christ. So beginning with Sinner, you get this up-tempo rocker, really strong opening track. The chorus is excellent and the solo is fucking astonishing. And it really shows that, 3 albums in, they've not only changed their style to a more metal sound, but they've also beefed out that metal sound. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that opening track, and then you get Diamonds and Rust, which is a cover. I forget who did the original.
It's a Joan Baez song.
That's the one. And
which I didn't even know that when I heard this the first time, because I listened to these albums cold, like I didn't read about them, and I was like, oh, that's cool, that's a cool song. And then later on, I went and read. I was like, holy shit, that's a folk song.
Yeah,
Joan Baez is known for folky stuff, and so it's interesting that they took that song and made it so cool,
Yeah, and it's cool to mention as well because live they play it totally differently, or at least nowadays they play it like a real slow, stripped back kind of ballad. But yeah, great song. It's one of the first Judas Priest songs I actually heard. And then you get track 3, fucking Starbreaker, which is a song that I cannot believe I forgot about, which is really fucking good. The chorus in that and the riff underneath it, my God, that shows where they were headed. And then you get Last Rose of Summer, which is a smooth ballad that comes seemingly out of fucking nowhere, but that's just 70s Judas Priest, I guess, still experimenting with what they can kind of do. I mean, on the previous album, they tried to do like a Frank Sinatra meets Queen kind of thing with fucking, what's it called? Prelude or Epitaph? I can't remember what it's called.
I don't either.
Yeah.
But in this case, with Last Rose of Summer, like in this, in my opinion, there is not a bad song on this album.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And so I think that I love it when they bring in these different feels and vibes in their music, especially on an album like this where they the songwriting is just top notch in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. I will say the part that I will say it's kind of similar to Loch Ness with the 2 minutes of kind of jamming around the same thing at the end, though, could have been a little shorter. Like they could have faded out before the second minute of that. Like,
hey, they're trying at this point. You do albums 1 year apart, and you're trying everything you can to make the motherfucker 40 minutes or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, and then you get Let Us Pray / Call for the Priest. Someone's been listening to Queen. That the intro is pure Brian May, and when it kicks in, it's this excellent speed metal track, and everybody talks about Exciter as like the genesis of speed metal, but this song came before it, and it's got some pretty great double kick in it.
Yeah, I really do think that comparing those two albums, this one and Stained Class, this is a superior album to me, and not to give anything away about where it's going to end up for me, but this album is. They were already molding a very good, firm idea of where they were going at this point.
For sure, yeah. And then you get Raw Deal, which is just riff. I totally forgot about the quality of songs on this record. I haven't listened to it in a long time. And then when I went back and revisited it for this series, I thought, Jesus Christ, this slab of gold has just been hiding away in my like music collection for me to rediscover. And, you know, this is probably, you know, one of my biggest rediscoveries as of doing this series, because it just really reminded me, actually, this record is fucking awesome. Then you get Here Come the Tears, this slow, vibey ballad. It's got a great solo in it. And then we have a song that would later go on to be covered by Slayer. I think, is this the first time we've met a song that we've technically covered before?
Yeah.
In this series? Because because this actually, we talked about the Slayer version in the Slayer podcasts. But yeah, this is the original. And
just like Diamonds and Rust on this album, when I first heard Dissident Aggressor on South of Heaven, I thought it was a Slayer song. I thought they were just taking a little bit of a turn for one song. So there you go.
And it is a great closing track, covered by Slayer, you know, 11 years later on the album South of Heaven. And it's also got one of the highest notes that Rob Halford ever hit in that opening scream. That, you know, that insane harmony that's like fucking way up here. And like, God, I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, is that real? Is this... Yeah, like I was
is this real life?
Yeah, is this real life? But yeah, it's a great album, and yeah, you know, the production really does show to me how the other 70s albums could have sounded, which is, you know, kind of a shame for some of the other records. And you know, I could kind of forgive the previous two albums before it, but when Stained Class stepped back from that and has a much thinner trebly kind of thing going on, it's kind of disheartening to hear, you know, such a classic album. You know, perhaps maybe if I fucked about with the EQ on my stereo, I might be able to get a bit more chunkiness out of it. But yeah, it's certainly, Stained Class is certainly an album that suffers, but this one does not, which is why it is higher up than the two albums that bookend it. So yeah.
But I do think that it's unfortunate. So like this period of music, you're talking about 70s into the 80s, when a lot of these classic bands were releasing an album a year, you know, and it makes me think that sometimes these albums were rushed because you had to finish. So you had to write an album, then get into the studio and record the album and mix the album so you could go out on tour. And so it seems like, you know, sometimes it was just the luck of the draw. It could be a great producer, but something goes wrong, and all of a sudden we got to get an album out, and the mix isn't what we want. And so I feel for the bands back then, because I'm pretty sure even the Judas Priest guys were, you know, for this album they were probably pretty proud of it. And then Stained Class, you know, the strength of the songs was there, but the production wasn't. But I have a feeling that it was almost like you had to settle. You know, like, all right, well, we got to head out on tour again, you know, so.
For sure.
That's just one of the pitfalls of 70s album releasing.
Totally. Yeah, but, you know, it's just such a, they really hit it out of the park with Sin After Sin.
I agree. I agree so much that I will have to tell you that album is not in this episode.
Wow.
It is in the next episode. Not to give anything away, but you know, whatever. We'll forget about it by the time we get to that episode. What am I at? Number 11? Is this 11?
Yes.
My number 11 almost was way higher, and it's not because of any fault of the album. I'll get into that in a second, but my number 11 is the most recent album, Firepower, from 2018.
Cool.
And this is a really good album. Like when it came out, I'm not a Priest fan, so I didn't really check it out. I think I probably heard a song and I went, all right, that's pretty good, but I didn't dive in to check it out. But listening to the whole thing, if this was their last album, then this would be a hell of an album to go out on. It's really good. The production is much better than the album prior to it, in my opinion. And like out of the gate, like the song Firepower is fucking great, but then it goes into like I could just read the track listing. Like I think every song on here has something in it where I went, oh, that's pretty fucking cool. And to this album's credit, the songs that I remember being the ones that I liked the most are on the second half of the album. So like I love Flamethrower, and I think Traitor's Gate was another one that I was really into. And it's just that says a lot for an album where you don't have all of those strong songs loaded in the front end. And on this album, like I have to say, I know this is there's a different guitar player on this, right? Richie Faulkner.
Yeah, he's also on Redeemer of Souls.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, that screw that album compared to this one. But because it really sounds like an album where these dudes de-aged 20 years. Like it has a lot of energy, and it's just a really, really fun listen. And it's like I say this, I said it a lot on the last episode, and it'll come up probably here and there. But Judas Priest, as good as Glenn Tipton and what's the other dude's name, other original guitar player?
KK Downing.
KK Downing. As good as those guys are at playing guitar and amazing lead guitar players, they write some real generic riffs every once in a while.
Yeah.
And this album does have some generic riffs. Now, it's weird saying this because I feel like I'm nitpicking, but on the other hand, I feel like I'm not, because there's all these metal bands out today, thrash metal bands, speed metal bands, whether they're trying to be more modern or they're trying to have a throwback kind of thing. They all use these recycled sounding riffs, and so there's a part of me that goes, "Am I being too critical?" Because if a riff sounds like a riff I've heard 10 other bands play, then I shouldn't just let it go, right? I shouldn't be okay with that. But that being said, about this album, everything seems to be played with such conviction that it doesn't bother me. I don't care that a riff seems like one that could have been pulled from some other album 10, 20 years ago. It's an album that's just it's good all the way through. It's very well done. I would say it is the best of the second era of Rob Halford albums. It's a very strong album. My only real gripe about it is that it's longer than I would like. Like I like my albums to be 45 minutes long. This one's pushing an hour. And even though none of the songs are bad, even the best album when it's an hour, I'm just kind of like, all right, I already have my opinion of this album now. I've already jotted all my notes. I kind of know where it's going to go in the list when I'm ranking the albums, and I'm like, 2 more songs, jeez. But yeah, that being said, if it's an hour's worth of strong material, how can you really argue with that? So that's why it's not just this podcast. It's like recently doing videos and stuff, my brain like is going faster than my mouth. And so I really think my old age is finally catching up to me, and my brain's not firing the way it's supposed to. But Firepower, speaking of that, my number 11.
I just want to chime in and say, I don't think it's an age thing, because I have been making some real fucking flubs recently in just conversations I've had with people. And it could just be down to the fact that it's 2020, and I think it's all getting to us now.
Yeah, our brains are rebelling.
Yeah, we're like, this is crap. But yeah, cool. So where am I at? I'm at number 10.
Number 10.
We have reached the top 10.
Hell yeah.
Our top 10s of Judas Priest. So I'm going to kick it off with the album with 2 names.
Oh, okay.
And that is Hellbent for Leather / Killing Machine. Yeah. Now, upon the original release of this album, the US were hesitant to call it Killing Machine on account of a recent shooting that had happened in the media, and they really didn't want that kind of, publicity. So they said, hey, let's just change it to Hellbent for Leather. It's another good song on the album. It'll work.
Both are great album titles in my opinion. So
for sure, yeah. And even the artwork fits both names, and it's just a really, this is my favorite album of their 70s era. They took everything they'd done to date, thickened it out, and dressed it in leather and studs, and generally perfected what they were building up to in the 70s. They've done 4 albums with distinctly different productions and styles, and then here they were like, we're a metal band now. So it's kind of like they were like, well, we're just gonna borrow our leather and studs imagery from the S&M clubs that Rob Halford would frequent, and basically,
I really do think that's why, to me, there's a big chunk of albums in the late 70s and early 80s from Judas Priest where it feels like they're not that different from each other. It's almost like they're taking different stabs at doing this thing that they're doing. Like, all right, that one was pretty good. Let's try it again. And this was one where clearly they nailed it. I mean, it's got a lot of good tracks on it.
I'd say this album, to me, is a much better version of what British Steel is.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's more ballsy, it's more experimental, and it's more so trying to just be a metal album than be a metal album that sells.
I could see that. You don't have a Breaking the Law or a Living After Midnight on it.
Yeah. That being said, though, I'm going to go into my track by track, and there's a few moments on here that really stand out to me. So yeah, I'm just going to get it going. So track 1, Delivering the Goods. Good Lord, fucking great song. One of the beefiest choruses in their entire discography.
That's what I was saying last time about how they have a lot of albums where the first track is just a ripper right out of the gate.
Definitely. Now I come to think of it, I'm trying to think of a Judas Priest album that doesn't start well. Yeah, they tend to shoot their load on track 1.
Well, I guess you could say Rock-a-Rolla. It doesn't really take off at the beginning. I like that song, but it's not. It doesn't have the same punch.
True. I feel like Victim of Changes could have been even cooler if they didn't fade in the guitars as much. Let that lead part play in. But yeah, back to Delivering the Goods. What a fucking awesome track. And I remember this is a really obscure story, but I'm going to tell it. It's a weird one. I was in a pub which was right on the beach of it was Porth Beach in Newquay, which is a big, pretty much it's Cornwall's answer to Ibiza, but it's not very good, but it's there. So it's got great beaches. So there's this place called the Mermaid Inn. It's this blue pub that's like right on the beach, and I went in there with a friend of mine. We just happened to be at the beach that day, and I sat down, and they clearly had someone in there playing the music that was a metal fan, because we were eating, this is such a British fucking story. We were eating fish and chips in this pub, and this guy was just absolutely cranking out tune after tune on the jukebox, and I think we had, throughout our fish and chips, we had Delivering the Goods, which was where I realized, holy shit, they're playing Judas Priest in this beach pub. And then we got the Pantera version of Planet Caravan as well. And it was just like this surreal moment where I was like, there's another metalhead somewhere and I need to find out where they are. But yeah, delivering the goods. It delivers the goods. It does what it says on the tin.
It's the most appropriate title ever.
Definitely. And then we get track 2. You know, I said all that about track 1. You know, this album starts well. Rock Forever, it's not quite as good as the opener, but delivering the goods takes some following. So it's still a good track. Evening Star, you know, blends some pop sensibilities with their late 70s metal sound. It's a clear shot at a radio song. They were definitely going for that kind of... It's almost like what we said about Living After Midnight. It's like a Kiss song. It's like definitely going for that accessible appeal while still keeping that hard rocking edge to it. Then you get Hellbent for Leather, which is also a fucking fantastic song. 70s Priest firing on all cylinders at this point. You know, this would be the US title track, and I actually call this album Hellbent for Leather because this is the album I think of. This is the song I think of when I think of this album, even though I know it's called Killing Machine over here and on streaming as well, I suppose. But yeah, then you get Take on the World. There's another one of their anthemic, we've been listening to Queen and we want our own version of We Will Rock You.
I mean, I guess there was a lot of pressure to put out some kind of hit song along with, you know, having a successful album. So, I mean, they had it in them, obviously. So, you know, just take a stab at whatever you think might be the thing that connects with the masses.
Oh, definitely. And not to say that these tracks are bad.
No.
I'm just little observations, but you know, these are strong, catchy songs. And then you get Burning Up, which is this sexy disco-esque rocker, very 1979. Green Manalishi with the two-pronged crown. I thought it was a badass Fleetwood Mac cover. They did a great job heavying it up. And it's I think it's a live staple to this day. They play it a lot, I think.
Which is weird to me because it's one of the moments on the album where I go, all right, well, this is not. I don't think it's great, but it is what it is.
Fair. But then we get the other title track. This album has 2 title tracks. While it's good, I still refer to the album as Hellbent for Leather, but nonetheless, it's got a nice chuggy groove to it. And then next up, we've got Wicker Man. Ahem, I mean Running Wild. Wonder how I mixed those ones up. Seriously though, go listen to the intros of both of those songs. It's pretty much identical. But yeah, great song.
Shit, I mean, we have to talk shit about Iron Maiden then because it's like that's what is that? How like 15 years later, something like that.
Yeah. What would it be? 21, would it? Yeah, 21 years.
Oh shit. Okay.
79 to 2000.
You're right.
Holy shit. But yeah, you know, obviously, there's only so many notes on a fretboard. Some of them are going to sound similar. And, you know, I love both songs. It wasn't a dig at Iron Maiden. Just, that was the first thing I thought. And I actually looked to make sure I was still listening to Judas Priest. And it hadn't just, like, automatically shuffled me onto Iron Maiden for some reason.
You know, it's only fair because several times in their career, Judas Priest tried to be Iron Maiden and didn't do it very well. So, so it's only fair that they get to take something from Priest.
And you know, it's a great song in keeping with Priest's driving up-tempo biker metal sound that they really went for on this album. Mm-hmm. And then you get Before the Dawn, this, you know, mystical ballad. It's good, but not a standout on an album with so many great driving tracks for me. And then, finally, we get Evil Fantasies. And this album does 2 styles that land particularly well on this record. Drivers and groovers. Mm-hmm. This one is the latter. And it lays down the sleazy stripper riff of the album. And Rob just really lays into those vocals, giving off almost like a Gene Simmons kind of feel at points. And I actually wish Rob did more of these, evil fantasies kind of like things going on.
I enjoy these little. I don't know what you even call them. It's I guess not only him but the band when they show a little bit of their influences that aren't metal.
Yeah,
it seeps into performances. I think it's super cool. I don't know. I love it.
And I wish Rob did more of these vocals where he goes low, because the dude can go low considering how known he is for being insanely high with his range. But this just has a real bluesy, it's almost like kind of Howlin' Wolf kind of like growly kind of gritty vibe to it in the vocals, and I feel as though after listening to all these albums, it's really impressive to hear him hit those soaring highs, but when he lays into his lower register, there's a real grit in there that I feel he could have used a hell of a lot more, and to great effect too, because this song to me fucking lands and really closes out the album in a really strong way.
I feel like that's a testament to how strong of a vocalist Rob Halford is, not just because he can sing all these different things, but he seems to be a guy that knows what's appropriate and brings that to a song. And this is just one of those cases. So, yeah.
Definitely. I'm on board with that all the way. Rob, do more lows.
Yeah. I think he's okay with that now that he's older. He'll do some more lows.
This is where he decides, some dude on a podcast somewhere on the internet told me not to scream anymore. So I guess I'm low again now. But yeah,
Wouldn't it be nice to have that kind of influence? It would be lovely.
But yeah, that is Hellbent for Leather.
Okay, so on to my number 10. And even though this album is now in the top 10, I feel from what I've seen out there in the metal public, this is the album where I put it here and people's comments will be like, what? Why did you put that album so low, man? You don't even know what you're talking about, man.
I'm looking forward to this.
Number 10, Painkiller from 19... See what I'm saying?
What?
See what I'm saying? Now, before I begin, if I was rating just the song Painkiller, this would be maybe number 1. Because Painkiller is an exceptional song. As we were talking about, them kicking open the door on an album, and as they would say later on in the album, they had all guns blazing, like right from the get-go. So Painkiller for me, I remember when this album came out. It's one of the few albums that we're talking about that prior to me doing my deep dive into Judas Priest, I had already heard this album. I knew it fairly well. And like I said, I love the song Painkiller. I loved it when it came out. I remember seeing the video on Headbangers Ball and being like, this is Judas Priest? Like, they're doing metal? Like, that was the weird thing, is that everyone talks about Judas Priest like, everyone knew they were a legendary metal band. I'm like, no, I was a metal fan, and I heard that song and went, I didn't know they played metal. So that song's great. And it really, when you compare the prior album, which was Ram It Down, and this one, it's almost like a slightly different band. Like, they took a little bit of a turn with Painkiller and got more aggressive and heavier. And to me, that is a good thing with this album, because going through and listening to a band's discography, I love the peaks and valleys and the different styles and things that they incorporate. And getting to this album, that right at the beginning, I'm like, oh, this is cool. I get, why this album was such a big deal and why a lot of people love this album. But just like you said with the last album, you go from Painkiller to Hell Patrol, and that is a huge step down in song quality. It's not a bad song. You've just gone from an amazing track to a pretty good one. And that is the problem with the whole album to me, is that there's a whole lot of good songs and only a couple amazing songs. And so it feels weird because it's not necessarily anything to do with the performances of the band, because they all sound good, but it's pretty uneven. And on top of that, I don't know why the production has to be so treble heavy. Like it's not like Stained Class where there's no bass, but it's like it's one of those things where I'm listening to it on headphones that increase the bass, and all I hear is the cymbals going shh like the whole time. It's and the guitars, there's too much there's it's not beefy enough. Like that takes away from the album too. Is it feels like they turned up the high end and didn't turn up the low end in the process, and I don't know. It's really kind of annoying to listen to when it comes to that. And then probably my other big gripe is I feel like somebody came to them and said, "Hey, if you want people to think you're a metal band, you need to have double kick on all the songs."
Yeah, I will say it is double kick right the way through.
And when you get to a song like Leather Rebel, it literally takes away from the song, where there's a part that does not even need double kick, but the drummer is so and I'm just, okay, dude, just chill out. Because there's open chords and there's a melody being sung, and it's still the goddamn double kick. But I guarantee you, all of the metal dudes out there, that's what they love about this album. It's real metal because there's double kick all the way through it. If only they had included blast beats, then this would be the best metal album ever made. And so it's things like that that make me feel like I'm not a metalhead. And then, but I don't know. I just feel like I expect more. And I really do think that there's a lot of, like I said earlier, recycled sounding riffs, which it's not just from, I mean, I guess I could say that now because this album is now 30 years old, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of the things I was hearing, other bands were already doing them. Like, that's the thing, is that this is 1990. All this heavier music was already happening. This is still a very light album when it comes to what was going on in 1990. And it just feels a little bit like they were... So like I said earlier about Angel of Retribution, it didn't feel like they were running away from what they did previously. This feels like they're trying to distance themselves from Turbo and ram it down, and trying a little bit too hard to do it. And the songs aren't good enough. So I think this album is one of those that has gotten overhyped over the years, but I think that it's because of the strength of the song Painkiller. Like, if you put this album on and you play that song, you are ready to get your ass kicked for 40 minutes or however long this album is. But it just doesn't do it for me all the way through. To be completely honest, the other song that really does it for me is A Touch of Evil, which has fucking keyboards in it. And it's not a really heavy song, but I like the vocals in that song especially. Like, I can't deny that, the band is really good at what they do. That's why this album is at number 10 and not lower, because it does have a classic quality to it. There's something about this album that, even though when I'm picking apart the things I don't like in order to put them in an order, it feels like there's a lot of, sort of metal by numbers kind of things on it. But in the end, though, like I couldn't turn away from the album and go, okay, it's a piece of shit. It's not. It's a very strong album. But where we're going from here, in my opinion, which the fact that there's two albums that I mentioned a little bit ago that I haven't talked about yet, and the fact that I have those higher than Painkiller,
holy shit!
I think people are going to they're going to come at me with the pitchforks now, sir. So you're safe. But I'm not
going to claim. I'm not going to claim to be 100% innocent, but I will say that my placing of Painkiller is not in this episode.
Okay, but I totally get that. This is an album where I absolutely understand that people love it. It's just in my journey through Judas Priest, this was one where it didn't have enough going for it to hold it above, pretty much everything that happened prior to it. So, there you go. Number 10, Painkiller. I don't know why I sang like that. That's not how the song goes. I made a totally...
Can we just take a moment as well to appreciate how fucking shamelessly badass the artwork for that album is?
Yeah.
What is it? This, like, robot knight riding on a fucking cyborg dragon motorcycle which breathes fire and has buzzsaw blades for wheels, doing a fucking jump over a burning skyline that's being devoured by lava with the Judas Priest logo, like, tuning fork thing emerging from the lava. And it's just, like, artwork wise, that is, if someone asked me what is the epitome of a metal album cover, that is the archetype every like traditional metal tryhard has to look at this, examine this image, and then pretty much, like, make music that sounds like that looks.
So wouldn't you think, though, saying all of those things, that this is metal overcompensation on this album cover? It's a little bit too much. I love it because I like that kind of shit. It's almost like the album cover is saying, you will love this album. It's not even giving you a choice. It's just like, if you're into metal, you will love this album. You won't even remember the songs, but you will remember the album cover.
Me personally, I think it was just serious damage control for the people that they lost with their hair metal era. Like, it is, you can tell that they wanted the artwork to reflect, like, they tried that with Ram It Down, but Ram It Down's artwork and Ram It Down's music is like, not discrediting the music. I'm just saying, you put it on and it's a pop metal album.
Yeah.
But the artwork would insinuate, ram that fucker down! Like, it's a giant steel fist slamming into a planet, which is just as over the top, really, but...
Yeah.
Like, the duo of those album covers, one reflects the sound a lot better.
I would agree with that. But to be fair, when I hear the title Ram It Down, I don't think of metal.
Yeah, true.
I think of naughty things happening. Which fits it a little more.
Definitely. Cool. So we are at number 9.
Number 9?
Number 9. Cool. So I've got here at number 9, Redeemer of Souls.
Okay.
So
I think this is the widest difference so far in our albums, because I think this was my number 16 or something like that. It was way down there. Yeah,
it was in the first half of the first episode. So
yeah.
I will say this is the first proper listening of this album that I've actually given it. Because when I was into Judas Priest, it was before this album came out. And then by the time it came out, I was kind of deep into the grunge thing. So I wasn't listening to as much, like, metal at the time as, well, I suppose, like, this kind of era of metal. So, I actually, it was Dan, who I do the other podcast with, that told me, you gotta stick on Redeemer of Souls, because that was the first, it was his first Priest album. So, he said stick it on, and we did a listening party together through Messenger. He was like, oh, wait for this part, oh cool. But yeah, I'm gonna go into my track by track as I do so finally on this lovely podcast I do with you, my friend. So cool. So Dragonaut, mean guitar tone right off of the bat. It does feel like a mixture of vintage and modern tone, and it feels like a Painkiller deep cut. I can definitely hear in the production that they were going for a vintage kind of feel. Despite the fact it came out in 2014, it does feel like they were like, oh, Painkiller was received well. Let's do another one of those. But yeah, we also got to remember that this is after Nostradamus, which was a bit of a flop. And 6 years had passed in that time. And KK Downing is no longer in the band, but, you know, Richie Faulkner does a damn good job. So then you get the title track, you know, again, gives off those Painkiller vibes, reminiscent of Hell Patrol, which is coincidentally, or perhaps intentionally, also track 2 on the album. Judas Priest have fully embraced the power metal sound at this point too. Then you get Halls of Valhalla, which that in itself, you know... Epic riffing, great chorus, banger of a track. You know, you can tell that the production has been made to feel like a classic Priest record. You know, the solo was pure power metal, and the bridge where Rob goes from Gregorian chant mode to an epic high note was really cool. Then you get Sword of Damocles, big grooving, epic sounding track, great melodies, huge chorus, cool spooky bit in it too. And then you get March of the Damned, which, you know, to me was kind of a weaker point. It sounded like a modern Motley Crue track played by Judas Priest.
Can I stop you and ask you a question and answer me honestly? Especially when you look at this album, Redeemer of Souls, The Halls of Valhalla, Sword of Damocles, March of the Damned. Do you think that they come up with these song titles before they ever write the songs?
I have a suspicion that they were like, that's a cool name for a song.
Yeah.
Let's write a song.
Sometimes it's just so on the nose.
Yeah.
That I'm just like, what are some metal titles? Well, I've got these. Let's narrow it down. All right, cool. Let's write a song that fits the Halls of Valhalla.
Although that being said, lyrically, subtlety has never been a thing in Judas Priest.
Absolutely. I don't know why I'm holding them up to that standard, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, it's... March of the Damned sounds like a modern Motley Crue track. You can tell it was designed to be a single. Not a highlight for me personally, but yeah. And then you get Down in Flames, which, you know, this feels more in keeping with the record again, bringing that traditional metal with a power edge to it that they went for on this record. And, you know, pretty much every record following Painkiller, to be honest. Then you get Hell and Back. The fucking snare drum on that song does give me a hard on. I can't lie, you know, and it's laying back on that groove. It's so fucking dirty and heavy. I do like Hell and Back. Cold Blooded manages.
I like that one.
Manages to straddle the line of old school Priest and modern metal. There's a great solo in it too. Then you get Metalizer, which is, you know, double kick time. It's pretty epic. Crossfire, oof. You know, there's some swagger. Not something we usually hear from Judas Priest after the 70s, you know. It's a real groovy one. Then you get Secrets of the Dead. Now that I'm reading these fucking song titles out, I'm really noticing it now. You know, it does sound rad, though. It's slow and doomy. You know, I like it. Battle Cry, epic metal barreling towards you with this double kick attack. Awesome riffs aplenty, and Rob doing what he does best. Then Beginning of the End. Closing track to the album. Excellent ballad. Totally nailed it on this one. But I know we said no bonus tracks, but I feel as though since they were recorded for those sessions, I included the 5 on the end as well. Mainly because Dan pressured me into it and said, dude, Snakebite is a great fucking song. You gotta check it out.
The album is already an hour long.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
But But yeah, Snakebite should definitely have been on the record. And in my opinion, you know how you're a major fan of like soundtracks from like the late 80s and early 90s having like the rock song in it. Snakebite sounds to me like it could have been in an action movie from the late 80s and early 90s when there was always the rock/metal track in the movie. I could definitely, see it being used to great effect in that setting.
Which is funny because immediately my brain goes to, because I'm all like, were they ever in an action movie? No, they did a song for the movie Johnny Be Good with Anthony Michael Hall. We'll get to that one.
Oh my god, yeah. And then you get Tears of Blood. Anyone else get Hellion Electric Eyes vibes with this track? I like it, but you can definitely tell it's a callback. Then you get Creatures, Evil and Theatrical, pretty campy metal track. Bring It On, hard rock mode, Activate. And then,
there's got to be some sort of punishment for a metal band, any metal band doing a song called "Bring It On."
Yeah.
Unless you're new metal. Other than that, it's time for punishment. It's time for the Painkiller to come out. I mean, seriously.
And then finally, if you followed the extra 5 tracks at the end of the album, you get Never Forget, which, lighters in the air, emotional ballad, not a dry eye in the house. It's to me, it's a nice way to end the album. And I feel like, Judas Priest doing those kind of tender moments, it does land well, because they're one of those bands that can pull off a really heavy thing like Painkiller, but still be melodic enough to get away with doing something like this.
So were these 5 songs an EP on their own, or were they always just bonus for this album?
I think it was an EP, but they tacked it on as a deluxe edition.
Okay.
But Dan pretty much held a gun to my head and said, "Hey, you're including these tracks because I love them too."
Well, you know what? I'll let it slide this time.
Yeah. You know what? I had a fun little experiment the other day just before we continue. You know how the bonus tracks on all of the remasters are pretty much... I think most of them were recorded in the Turbo sessions because it was going to be a double album. But so I took the ones that would have been on Ram It Down, and I tried to see where the songs Fire Burns Below and Thunder Road would have gone. And Thunder Road's a pretty cool song. But I just felt like I wanted to shout that one out. Because, Anyway, we'll get to that era of music. Not yet, though. Are you done with this one? I'm done with Redeemer of Souls. Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is yet again one that people will get the pitchforks out for, but I feel better because you had this album way lower than I did.
I think I know which one this is.
Yes, we're going to be talking about British Steel from 1980. So like I said earlier when we started this episode, once you get past me talking shit about Loch Ness, my gripes are real sort of nitpicky because I'm trying to figure out how to order these albums. So I do think overall British Steel is a overhyped album. Only because it has this status of if you're going to listen to Judas Priest, then you need to listen to British Steel, and I think that that's wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
think that it's a very good album, and I feel like maybe in the story of the band, it was a very important album for them. Because, it got them some hits off of it, and I don't know. It's a strong album overall. To me, the album has a very good production. It sounds like 1980 to me, but it's enjoyable. And I think that's a quality that a lot of these albums have, that even if the songs aren't as strong as on another album, sometimes the vibe of it is just really enjoyable to listen to. And British Steel seems to have a lot of vibe going on. I have to say that since we've been comparing a lot, And I think it says something about Judas Priest, the fact that we can take their songs and go, this sounds like another band.
Yeah.
Rapid Fire sounds like Motorhead. It sounds like a Motorhead
Yes.
song that they just decided to write. And so
That could have easily been a Lemmy track. Pounding the world.
yeah. And really, like, so I'm going by apparently there's a different track listing in the US, but fuck that. I'm going by OG, and it starts with Rapid Fire, which Rapid Fire to me is a much better intro than Breaking the Law. Breaking the Law is a mid-album track at the most, but so this is the album where I feel like they have fully embraced being a metal band while at the same time realizing that they also want to reach a broader audience.
Yeah.
And you can hear the push and pull of that on this album. I really think that up until this point, this seems like the most sort of straightforward with all of the songs. Like, it seemed like albums prior, there was lengthier songs, and sometimes there were songs that had different vibes, and there was moods, and there was an ebb and flow to the album. I feel like this, it's kind of got its mission and doesn't stray too far from it at any point.
Yeah.
And then we talked about Living After Midnight, which I think could be a Kiss song.
For sure.
But I do really like that song. I mean, who could not like Living After Midnight? That's just I don't know. You have to check your pulse if that song comes on and you don't have a good time. It's just a really great rock song.
I have a funny story about Living After Midnight.
Okay, go ahead.
I managed to get it played at like a family get together, like a family reunion one time. It was like a wedding anniversary at the local like village hall or whatever it is. It's kind of like a working men's club as it's known. But there's a dance floor in there, and there's a disco setup and everything, and mostly they were playing stuff like ABBA and Status Quo and stuff like that, kind of playing up to the generation of people that are generally in the room. And then there's me and a couple of hell-raising individuals. I think we must have been about like 14. We were like, hey, let's go talk to the guy and see if he's got any Priest. and we just thought it'd be really funny if he did. And we went over expecting nothing. And then come to find out he did have Living After Midnight. So I was like, stick it on. It was like, they'll love it. Stuck it on. And everybody was like, who put this on? And then there's just me and my cousin in the corner, just there like fucking Beavis and Butthead in the corner. But yeah,
I feel like if you're into Status Quo, you could like Living After Midnight. I don't think that's a huge jump.
Yeah, I know, it's weird. I thought it was strange as well, because like I suppose like unless they like actively knew the song, they were like, huh?
Yeah.
What's that now? But yeah,
that's always good to when you're a kid to somehow get the metal into a situation where there normally wouldn't be any metal.
Yeah,
that was always very fun. I know this is not on the topic at all, but it's on the topic of your story. I was at a junior high school dance, which was in 1991.
Ooh.
And so I had to have been in eighth grade, I believe, at that point. And we managed during it's a dance where all they're playing is pop music and hip hop music of the time for the most part. And we talked the DJ into playing Enter Sandman.
Hey.
which is that's not a party song at all. And it cleared the dance floor where it was literally just me and like 5 or 6 of my friends headbanging in the middle of the floor while everyone else went to go get food or whatever. But it was fine. Yeah. We felt like we all of a sudden were welcomed at the dance. But yeah, a similar story.
That's a fucking awesome story, dude. I love stuff like that.
So, but yeah, back onto British Steel. Which to compare those two, British Steel has a Black Album kind of aura to it when you're talking about albums that broke bands big
Yeah.
I feel like British Steel was that album. But I do feel, so I was talking about them kind of having that weird juxtaposition between, hey, you young metal guys, we are also metal. And then at the same time, they're also like, hey, you other people out there, we can write songs you might like too. And so because of that, I feel like it's less adventurous, and at times it's a little bit meh with some of the songs, even though it's very enjoyable. But I really do think that overall, it's an album that I think gets a lot of credit for, a couple of really great songs and a cool album cover and album title. Because, I mean, that's a great album title on its own. British Steel, that just sounds like an album I want to listen to.
Oh, totally.
And I love the album cover. I don't know, that is one, that's an iconic album cover to me. That might be my favorite Judas Priest album cover. Just the simplicity of a hand holding a razor, and it says I don't know. It's something so inspired to me. Like, I feel like the album cover is almost better than the album. Like, as opposed to Painkiller, where it's overkill a little bit. It feels very cool. Like, it looks like a very cool album.
See,
I guess go ahead.
Sorry, now you go first. I was just going to chime in with the artwork there.
I was just going to say that I feel like that's what this album is. It's not an amazing album. It's a cool album. It's, you put it on, you're like, all right, yeah, I'm down with this, but it doesn't blow me away the way things we will get to blow me away.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say, my favorite Judas Priest artwork is, set Painkiller aside, my favorite artwork would be the trilogy of Screaming, Defenders, and Turbo, with that really cool, I think his name was Doug. I think his name's Doug Johnson. I looked into it because another fun story. I think when I was in, like, I suppose what you would call a sophomore year, it's year 8 over here. I was doing an art project, and we were told to pick an artist and study them and look at what they do. And I thought, oh, this is a golden opportunity to look at some album covers and pick whoever did those. And then the most consistent I looked at were the trilogy of Screaming, Defenders, and Turbo. And I just thought, who's the guy that did this? Because clearly it's all the same guy. It's the same art style. And I did a project on that kind of stuff. But
I really do think that Screaming for Vengeance and Turbo, they're very similar. If you look at them, the style of them, they're very similar. I've always thought, we'll get to Defenders of the Faith, but that album cover, I've always been like, what the fuck is going on in this album cover? We'll get to it later. But I can't even believe it's the same dude, except for I do see the diagonal line kind of thing. He likes doing that a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think British Steel is easily my favorite album cover of theirs.
Cool. Nice. So I guess that brings me to my number 8.
Yes, sir.
So my number 8, I've gone for Angel of Retribution.
Okay. Hey, we got a twofer in this episode.
Hey, have we matched up so far in this?
We only matched up once with Sad Wings of Destiny. That's the only album that I think we had as the same number, or maybe one after the other. Maybe it wasn't a match. Maybe it was just one after the other.
I think that one was a match. I don't know if we've said any of the same albums yet in this episode, have we?
No, I don't know. I don't think
Damn.
so.
Which is testament to how diverse Judas Priest's music and fans' tastes are.
Totally. I mean, I'm willing to bet we could have 5 other people on this podcast and they would have completely different lists too.
Totally. And when you got the benefit of nearly 20 albums as well, there's opportunity for stuff to be all over the place.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to jump straight into my track by track, being as we talked about Angel earlier. So Judas Rising, it conjures that victim of changes thing right at the start with that fade in, harmonized lead guitar intro, and really shows that the Halford lineup is back. Deal with the Devil, damn fine metal song. You know, I love that song. The riff is just so fucking good. I've got my note here for Revolution is going down the mountain, because like if you listen to the riffs, they're so similar to Mountain Song by Jane's Addiction. But yeah, it's a cool song, but I can't not think of Mountain Song being a better song when I hear it. And I whenever Revolution comes on, I'm thinking to myself, I could be listening to Mountain Song right now. But
I wonder. Well, no, I don't know. There's a part of me that goes, are Judas Priest even aware of Jane's Addiction? Like, are they? I mean, maybe they are.
Yeah, it's possible, but is it? Because they are within like the hard rock metal genre, but they're on a totally different end of it.
I just feel like if you listen to what Judas Priest was doing when Nothing Shocking came out, it's very different.
Yeah,
very different.
And then you get Worth Fighting For, which in my opinion is probably one of the most boring Judas Priest songs in my opinion. Did you miss that part?
No, I think I missed a tiny bit. My earbud fell out.
Yeah, I was just saying, Worth Fighting For doesn't do much for me at all, to be honest. It could be my least favorite Judas Priest song. Like,
wow, and we're talking about an album that has Loch Ness on it, so that's a bold statement.
To me, Worth Fighting For just doesn't have really any energy to me. Being quite honest, it's a very kind of plodding with no real climax kind of thing going on. The duo of Revolution and Worth Fighting For is a real lull in the album for me personally, but then you get fucking Demonizer, which is way further up my alley. Double kick, nasty riffs, fuck to the yeah, and the outro with Demonizer going on, like fucking Rob just doing the really gnarly kind of high screams that he does.
That's another reason why I think they come up with song titles first, because a lot of times the chorus of the song always ends with him just singing the name of the song.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get that happens a lot. It's not just Judas Priest, I know that, but it's they do that a lot where they sing just the word. And that's the refrain or whatever.
I will say probably the biggest example that I can think of off the top of my head for a band that says the name of the song in the song is Dokken. I implore you to find a single Dokken song where they don't say the title in like the main part of the song.
That's true. I mean, I'm thinking about Dreams as the first song I thought of.
But yeah, where am I? Where am I at? I'm on Wheels of Fire. This song is like your straight up Chad alpha as fuck song. You look cool listening to this. You could be the biggest dweeb on earth, and your package would grow by at least 3 inches with this song on. Yeah. Angel, beautiful. Love this song. I love the guitar solo that comes in. It's really melodic. I absolutely love it. Hell Rider, I love for pretty much the same reason as Demonizer, to be honest. Eulogy is this like weird symphonic track. No loud guitars, just haunting and dark, which, is cool. But then you get
It's the interlude or whatever that's leading you in to Loch Ness.
So if you combine Eulogy and Loch Ness, that's 15 minutes of 15, album.
Yeah.
And Eulogy really is an interlude. But then you get the 13-minute long epic closing track, Loch Ness, which I actually have in my notes is doom metal, anyone?
Well, that's why I'm saying it. It reminds me of when Sabbath came back with that last album, and every song was just so plodding and repetitive. And it's like Sabbath were just doing old Sabbath riffs that other bands did, and now this is the same thing, where it's just this riff that is not interesting enough to be played over and over again. But then again, I'm not a very big doom metal fan, because I think a lot of those bands are guilty of
Sabbath worship.
well, not just that, but just sacrificing interesting songwriting for just a vibe. Which a vibe is fine every once in a while, but if that's your only thing, or if you're doing it for too long, I'm just like, I'm out, man. I'm gonna go get a beer.
I'll be honest, actually, I've been kind of drawn to doom recently. You know, it's a genre that I haven't really explored, but I've been feeling the kind of vibey kind of stuff recently. And there's a band called Monolord that I've listened to a lot of recently.
Yeah, I've heard them.
Yeah.
I guess I don't smoke enough weed. Maybe if I did, I'd be a little more into it. It's only because I can't find a dealer around here.
I mean, I all I do is drink, to be honest. So, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Beer. But yeah, just cycling on back to Loch Ness. Loch Ness could have been a really cool, really cool song to me. You know, like I said earlier, you could slice 7 or 8 minutes off of this song and it would not suffer. You know, it would probably do it a world of good. In actual fact, I might set aside some time this week to, you know, do a little bit of a radio edit myself and see if I can cut it down.
I mean, but they have to. I guess. I mean, it's long because I think there's a story in the lyrics or whatever.
Yeah, but most of it doesn't have vocals. It's just a doom riff.
I mean, I checked out halfway through. Like, this was one where I was like looking at other stuff, and I was, you know, looking at wall fixtures and being like, oh, I never looked at that for today. But I don't know. I'm being a little bit cruel to Loch Ness because it's not awful. I think on this album it's awful.
Just look at the craftsmanship in these door jams.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I agree. Too long, but the parts that are good are really good, to me at least. But yeah, that is my number 8, Angel of Retribution.
Cool. I mean, yeah. I mean, I apparently I liked it too. It was on this same episode, so it's in my mid section of albums. So yeah, but so we're on 8. I'm my 8 now, right? Number 8.
Yeah.
Okay, so this really gets to a point where there's a lot of great albums that I can't argue. You know, you get into these things, and sometimes there are albums that I think are classic albums, and they're kind of just assigned that status, and people just go along with it. But I have to say, at least I would say from here on out, it's either albums that I really like or albums that I heard and went, yeah, I can't fucking deny this. And my number 8 is Screaming for Vengeance.
Hey.
From 1982. And I really think that a big problem for me with this album is the production is good, but to me, British Steel and Point of Entry sound better than Screaming for Vengeance, sonically speaking.
Wow.
And but that's a minor gripe. Once again, it's me looking for things in order to order these albums, because there is a really good energy on Screaming for Vengeance, and I think, like you said, for a different album, with Screaming for Vengeance, I feel like this is what British Steel should have been.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a much better version of that. And it's, I mean, I would have to say that a weak point on the album is the most famous song from the album, You've Got Another Thing Coming. I think that's kind of a whatever song. I don't think it's amazing. But the thing I like about this one is that sometimes they go for the more metal tracks, and then they have the variety of the sort of more hard rock and other kind of vibes. This is the album where the heavier tracks I think actually stand out more to me because I do enjoy the more mid tempo things, but the heavy tracks are really strong on this album, especially the song "Screaming for Vengeance." It's a fucking great song. I feel like there's not a whole lot of weaknesses in this album. There's a couple of things here and there, I guess. Bloodstone's a great song.
Bloodstone.
I really like that. And I guess that's not necessarily metal. It's got a good groove to it. I really do think that overall, like I didn't have a lot to say to pick apart with this album, but listening to it in succession, is that the right word?
Yeah.
From British Steel, Point of Entry, and then this one, it didn't build upon those two in the way that I would hope that it would. While I do think it's better than British Steel, clearly I don't think it's better than Point of Entry because we haven't talked about that album yet for me. But this is an album where as I'm listening to it, every single song I go, I really get why this is some Priest fans' favorite Priest album. I absolutely understand that. It just wasn't my favorite. So here it is at number 8.
Fair enough. I will say, production-wise, this, to me, is the album that signals that 80s Judas Priest has arrived. Because the thing is, British Steel, sonically, sounds very similar to Killing Machine. That kind of era, you know? Maybe a tad more polished, but it's still very much within that same style. And to me, Point of Entry sounds like they took the poppy side of British Steel and made a whole album of that.
Yeah.
And then you've got this one, which has a complete overhaul of the band's sound. You know, the reverb on the drums is much higher. You know, everything is produced to be bigger. They've, you know, gone for a different art style that is very, you know, sleek and just generally 80s looking, you know? Because
I do think, though, with all of those albums that you mentioned, though, I would say starting with maybe Killing Machine, British Steel, Point of Entry, Screaming for Vengeance. To me, those 4 albums, even though you can't, there are things that set them apart from each other. I feel like it was them trying different things with the same soup. You know, it's like, you know, same kind of ingredients. They're just trying different things with them. And so I feel like that's an era that ends up kind of running its course with Screaming for Vengeance.
Yeah, they kind of landed on a formula with this one. And this is kind of why I think, if I'm correct, if I've got my metal history right, this album is the one that broke them through to the US.
It wasn't British Steel that broke them over here? I mean, I was too young to know.
I think their commercial breakthrough in the US was in '82 with.
So it must have been another thing coming. That was a big.
That song was.
Which funny enough, if I remember right, that phrase "you've got another thing coming" is actually incorrect. Like, it's an incorrect phrase that is continued on as a norm now that it's incorrect. Yeah, because I believe the original saying is, like, it goes like this: if you think I'm going to let you get away with that, you've got another think coming. It's supposed to be think. You've got another think coming, but somehow it got bastardized or whatever you want to call it, and it got changed to you've got another thing coming. Which, when you think about it, what does that even mean? Another thing? I guess that could be anything. It's just got, what kind of thing do I have coming? Oh, it doesn't matter. It's another one of those. So I think it makes more sense when you say another think, because even in the lyrics, if you think I'll let it go, you're mad. You've got another think coming. You'd be like, you'll think again. It's supposed to be like think again. And so it's weird that, like, it's become a norm now. Nobody says you've got another think coming. And I'm not going to start doing it just to be one of those assholes. Actually, I'm not going to be one of those people.
We need one of those.
I'm just not going to say it at all.
we need one of those the more you know stars just go over the top. Ba-ding, boom, ding. Right on. So we're at number 7, yeah?
Number 7, last one of the episode for both of us.
Okay. So my number 7.
Do it. I'm excited because of the albums that we haven't talked about yet. I'm excited.
Okay. Well, my number 7. The top pick for the middle portion of our series on Judas Priest.
The most middlest of middle albums.
Here it is. Number 7, Jugulator.
Okay, all right.
So,
I was wondering when this one was going to pop up, so cool.
So this is the first album that they did with Tim Ripper Owens, and good Lord, is it heavy.
Oh, yeah.
7 years have passed since Painkiller at this point, but you can tell in that time how drop-tuned and heavier, metal got, especially with bands like Pantera, Machine Head, and bands like that really pushing this groove element throughout the 90s. By the time you land on 1997, nu metal is kind of kicking off, but Judas Priest wouldn't really fit with nu metal, so the groove element is much more prominent here. And so I'm just going to go straight into it. So Jugulator is the scariest intro to a Priest album ever. I don't even care that Rob isn't present for this release. He went and did Fight, which was cool. This is heavy, and Ripper does an excellent job on vocals. Almost feels like death metal with power metal vocals.
Yeah, and Jugulator's another one of those tracks right out of the gate, a Ripper.
Yeah. And, I will say, though, that a production gripe for me personally was the lead guitars are mixed weirdly loud and in the mix, and they kind of hurt my ears, I'm not gonna lie, because you're listening to this like kind of stuff, and then it's like way too fucking loud. You might have to do some fancy mixing there.
I'm gonna mix that so it's even louder.
It's just like one of those like ear rape memes that's like totally fucking distorted beyond all recognition. Jeez. Yeah, before I hurt any more of our listeners' ears, I'm putting a cap on that one. So then you get Bloodstained, and you can tell they were influenced by this new generation of heavy bands, but they do a great job of showing that they can do it too. This album could have been perfect if they didn't make the lead guitars painful to listen to. I found myself, eagerly awaiting the solo with my with my hands on the volume knob, thinking, here it comes, and drop it down a little bit, and wait for the lead guitars to finish what they're doing, and then turn it back up when it's gone, because it fucking kills. But
I didn't really notice that when I listened to it, but I'll have to go back and check it out. But
it might have had something to do with how the album sounds on YouTube. I had to use YouTube because it's not on Spotify.
You mean you don't own this album?
I don't know. Yeah, it's one I haven't gotten around to actually buying. I do need to buy it.
I mean, it's your most middleist album. You should go buy it.
Definitely. Had they included it in the chronology of... I've actually got the Judas Priest remastered CDs, and it makes a little picture on the side, and it says Judas Priest along the bottom with all the albums lined up.
So you have to collect them all in order to make the picture.
It's like fucking heavy metal Pokemon. Got to catch them all. But yeah, these song titles as well show that they're really not fucking around here. Because, obviously on Painkiller, you've still got songs like All Guns Blazing and Leather Rebel and Metal Meltdown, which are really very tame compared to Bloodstained, Dead Meat, Decapitate, Burn in Hell, Brain Dead. There's so many fucking, they're almost like thrash titles. You know, you know, where am I at?
Or
Dead Meat.
obituary song titles.
Fucking Obituary. I love Obituary. I love what's his name? John Tardy.
Yeah.
John Tardy's vocals. His vocals are insane. Sorry, I know I keep going on tangents, but
That's all right. We can talk about obituary. I love them.
I love his vocals because every single line ends with and like whenever he says like a line, imagine if he sang for Judas Priest, it would be like breaking the or like something like that.
he adds a few more syllables and vowels at the end of every word.
The comment section on Chopped in Half is one of the funniest things I revisit every now and again.
Because it's like chopped in half.
Yeah, it's like everybody in the comments is just saying shit like that, and I think one of them is like chopped in half. John Tardy's vocals make me laugh. It's like,
see, we say that now, but I when I heard that album when I was a teenager, I was like, these are the best vocals I've ever fucking heard in my life.
Oh yeah, they're fucking great, but it's funny when you step back and analyze how he enunciates everything with this.
We'll have to revisit that whenever we get to obituary somewhere down the line.
Oh, totally. That's gonna be a fucking killer episode because every song
our throats are going to be sore.
Oh, but yeah, I gotta reel in the tangent now. I gotta get back to
Jugulator. I like saying it like you more. It makes it sound like a cooler album title.
Just say it like Del Preston, like, yeah. So we were on the tour for Jugulator, and
we had to get 400 leather studs.
Or Ripper wouldn't go on stage that night.
That's right. I immediately want to rewrite it so it's a 90s story. So he's all like Corey Taylor. I guess Corey Taylor would be later. Fuck, I don't know.
It's like
Jonathan Davis whipped around and said there's a little sex shop on the edge of town. This is a Wayne's World 2 tangent. I'm sorry, guys. We're not even talking. It's like nobody either you know the movie or this is just complete nonsense that we're talking about here.
That being said, if anyone's this deep into metal music that they're listening to a podcast about the meh albums of Judas Priest, they've probably seen Wayne's World at some point.
Or they're just hate listening because they hate it when people talk shit about Judas Priest, and I've been doing a little bit of that.
Hell yeah, but that's what makes these talks interesting. So let's here it is. Dead Meat, again, really heavy song, most brutal Priest album out there. Death Row.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, Death Row, good lord, it is just not letting up. Decapitate, Pantera? Is that you? Like, the tone and groove is just so fucking bone-crushingly heavy on this album, and it's a shame that this album doesn't get talked about more. I mean, I know Demolition perhaps isn't nearly as good as this, but god damn, like, the Ripper era deserves more recognition, at least for this record, because in this episode, obviously, I've got both of them in the middle section of my list, but Jugulator is 5 albums apart from Demolition, and songs like Burn in Hell, underappreciated doesn't even come close for that song. I love that fucking song. Brain Dead is obviously the new metal track. It gives off similar vibes to what Slayer would do with their albums around this era, but it also has some thrashy moments. Abductors, a bit more out there with some, kind of vibey bits, but also keeping that groove very much alive. And then we get Bullet Train, which could be my favorite song on the album. Love this song. Really laid back yet intense groove, and it's got a real nasty riff over the top of it. And I love the shameless, we're fucking metal parts in the gang vocals.
Yeah.
And then finally you get Cathedral Spires, which is a big epic closer. Great song, real dynamic. I love it. And the heavy parts are heavy. But my only gripe with this album is its cover, because if you look at the album cover and the original artwork that it was meant to come with, it's pixelated because they didn't resize it properly. And this is late 90s, so, computers are still kind of figuring it out. And I feel like they made a big fucky-wucky with the artwork on this, because the original artwork is badass. Like, it's this giant metal robot monster overlooking this hellscape.
Yeah, I saw that, and why did they go with this zoomed-in version of it? That doesn't make any sense.
I suppose maybe it was to, like, accentuate, oh, hey, the monster's really, really cool. Hey, let's, get a close-up of him. But then, in doing that, they just ended up pixelating it.
I wondered why, when I was looking for images for the visual version of this podcast, I was wondering why all the pictures of this album cover are so shitty. And so I guess now I know.
Because that's the actual artwork on the album. Like, how that happened, I do not know, but yikes. Yeah, someone got fired. But, that is my number 7 pick and my last pick for this episode.
Jugulator.
Jugulator.
Cool. Well, we're going to, for my number 7, we're going to do a complete 180 from Jugulator. And I thought this album would actually be higher on my list. But
Jugulator.
No, the album I'm going to.
Oh, okay.
But when I listened to all of the albums, including some that I hadn't heard all the way through, I was like, okay, well, unfortunately, this one has to be the most middleist of the middle albums. And I'm going to go with Turbo for my number 7. And,
wow.
I not only do I like the song Turbo Lover, I like this whole album.
Agreed.
I have no problem with this album, and I feel like it gets a lot of shit, and I understand why, but I don't know. I feel like we've come all the way back full circle now to where Rob Halford is back and they're doing metal songs.
Yeah.
It's now time for everyone to just, loosen their pucker holes a little bit and go back and listen to Turbo. I really enjoyed this era of the band, the mid to late 80s of Judas Priest, and in listening to the albums the way that I did. Like I said before, when you go through those albums, ending with Screaming for Vengeance, and then you get Defenders of the Faith, and then you get over to Turbo, like it something happens with their albums where all of a sudden it almost feels like they're just enjoying themselves, like they're not trying so hard just to be. Oh, well, we're Judas Priest, so we have to make this particular kind of music and fit these kinds of songs in. This feels way more natural. Turbo feels like the album that I think they wanted to make in 1986. And that comes through in the songs and the performances. It's very 80s sounding, the most 80s sounding Judas Priest album. But in the grand scheme of things, it's totally enjoyable once you get to this because it's a little bit different. It's got a shitload of keyboards everywhere.
Yeah.
Keyboards even used, like, when you think of keyboards, you probably think of like lead keyboards, like Final Countdown. It plays over it. But this has like rhythm keyboards in it, like it's like rhythm keyboards on this album, and I love it.
It's almost like a synthwave album before synthwave was a thing.
I guess you could say that. But so Turbo Lover is a great song. Locked In is also really good. I do feel like Locked In is one of the songs on the album that if they had played it and produced it like the earlier albums, it would sound like an earlier Judas Priest song. But it gets the turbo overhaul on here. But I really do think that there's so many And I guess maybe with you along with me, because we enjoy the 80s hard rock experience, including the hair bands and all of that stuff. So that's why songs like Private Property and Parental Guidance don't bother me. Like, I think they're fun. I love Parental Guidance. I sing that shit at the top of my lungs. That is a...
Yeah.
By the way, this is one of the few albums that I had heard most of this album before I came back to listen to it again. Songs are catchy. They're just... and you have to give them credit for the fact that they had a kind of a clear direction of where they wanted to go, and they just stuck to it. Like, they're not pulling any punches here. They're not like trying to make this into a heavier album. They didn't want to do it. And in the grand scheme of things, if you are talking about Judas Priest albums, I could see why this one would sit lower in a whole lot of people's lists, because sure, it's not anywhere near British Steel. And I guess you could say that parts of it are kind of silly. I mean, Rock You All Around the World's kind of dumb, but
I feel like that benefits the album though. It's got a real Bill and Ted feel to it.
Yeah, it's just got a lot of fun. And and what's the problem with having fun when you're listening to music? Why does everything got to be so goddamn serious all the time? Yeah. And honestly, even like Out in the Cold to me is probably the least Judas Priest sounding song they ever did. And I don't know why I love it so much. It's just so good. I really enjoy it. So as you can hear, I don't have a whole lot to say that's negative about this particular album, except for, I guess, as a Judas Priest album, it's different enough to where if I want to make the argument that I made about Demolition, where I'm all like, it doesn't even sound like the same band. It doesn't even fit. It just sounds like something else. I get that argument for this album, but I don't care because I have a lot of fucking fun listening to Turbo. So that's why it's my number 7.
Yeah, I agree. Turbo to me is like they took the essence of, driving a nice 80s sports car on a hot day with the top down and the wind going in your hair, and they pretty much nailed the 80s sound with this album, and I know it got hated on for being really poppy at the time, but really as an 80s album, it's a fucking good 80s album. It really captures the essence of that era. And I have a fun little super 80s fact for you. Did you know that Reckless was going to be on the soundtrack for Top Gun?
I did not know that.
Yeah. Totally fits though.
I mean, absolutely. That's pretty damn cool.
Hell yeah.
And also, this is what we talked about last time. This is the era of Rob Halford where he had that slick back hairdo thing. Fuck, I don't know. I don't know enough about their live output, especially recently. Do they completely ignore this album live? Do they play anything off of it when they play live shows?
I think it's fared better than Ram It Down. I don't think anything off of Ram It Down gets played much, but I think there's a few tracks on here
that's a crime too, in my opinion. Clearly, I like that one because I haven't even talked about Ram It Down yet.
Well, I tell you what, it's a refreshing thing to see that I actually put a post in the Judas Priest subreddit that said, "Hey, any Ram It Down fans out there?" Because I'd consistently seen it ranked low in online lists and stuff like that. So I was like, hey, I really like this one, and it gets a real bad rap. Who's with me? And, I think last time I checked, there were like 37 upvotes on it. And, they're out there. Ram It Down has its fans.
Yeah, I that's what I think is so sad about it, because I've never seen Judas Priest live. I hear they're a great live band. But if I went to go see them, I would want them to play Turbo Lover along with Painkiller and Exciter. Like, I just feel like that would make a fucking cool show. Just like give us the Judas Priest story. Don't just come out and be like, we're metal gods. Yeah, okay, okay, fine. But you weren't always. You made Turbo, so fess up and play a goddamn song. Play. If they ever played Parental Guidance, I would lose my shit. I'd be like, finally. And funny enough, like I don't remember the exact year, but I do believe that this is around the time period in Judas Priest where that Heavy Metal Parking Lot movie was made.
It is. Yeah, it's that tour.
Yeah, so I just think about those dudes outside in the parking lot, and they're about to
Heavy
go
metal
in and
rules,
see this.
all that punk shit sucks.
That's
belongs on fucking Mars, man.
My favorite line that guy says is, "Madonna can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. She's a dick."
She's a dick.
God, that's such a fucking good little 30-minute or however long it is. That's a classic. Just in that girl, what would you do if you saw Rob Halford? Oh, I'd jump his bones.
I just love the fact that the dude who's like, Madonna's a dick is just head to toe in zebra print, you know?
Oh, God, the zebra man. Madonna, I've heard she is kind of a dick, though. Anyway, so that's it. That is unless you have anything else to say about Turbo, but this is not your pick. So Turbo is even higher for you, so that makes me happy because the shit. Wow, but there's a lot of albums that I'm so excited for the next episode. Let's just do it right now. Let's do it now.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
So I hope everyone out there is as excited as I am, because I just have a feeling that the next episode is going to be a whole lot of fun because all the albums we're still going to talk about.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're still with us and we haven't pissed you off too much. I really do think that if you're listening to podcasts where people talk about Judas Priest albums, I think ours is a unique take. So, anything to add before we go for the day?
Heavy metal rules, all that punk shit sucks. Belongs on fucking Mars, man.
He starts naming off bands, the Circle of Shit and the Dicks. I gotta go watch that again. Okay, so Heavy Metal rules and all that punk shit sucks. Thank you very much for listening to Cranked and Ranked, and we will see you all again next episode for the top 6 Judas Priest albums in our opinion. So thank you for listening. Hell yeah. Join us then. We'll see you next week. Eddie, take us out.
Fucking later, dude!